Before we start, just a quick reminder. The views and content shared on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and are not a substitute for professional advice. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between therapy and life coaching. And I'll be doing a lot of talking since I'm a therapist and a life coach.
And I'll be here for vibes.
And Katie's here for vibes and support and basically thinking like the audience, because not being a therapist and a life coach, she can help with, I don't know. I mean, my brain doesn't think that way, so that can be really helpful. So we're doing 3 episodes on therapy and coaching. We just did the one on all the questions about therapy, diving into therapy. And the reason that I'm going into the difference between therapy and life coaching is because it isn't clear to a lot of people. There's also different opinions and perspectives on it. And if you want professional support in becoming self-centered, you might want to know, well, what kind of service could help me with that? And I think either could help you with that. So let's jump in. So I'm going to talk first about the therapy field's perspective, then what I've seen from the life coaching field. Life coaching is not regulated, meaning there aren't laws and governing bodies that have rules around it and definitions that are official and authoritative. So I can really only speak to what I've seen on the whole. I can't say, oh, this is what is said for sure. Whereas with therapy, it's literally legally written out, and clinical boards and things like that have definitions. So we'll talk about therapy field's perspective, coaching field's perspective, and then I'm going to tell you Allie's perspective, my perspective as a therapist and a life coach. So therapy, the therapy field, like I said, is regulated. So here's a legal definition of therapy according to the Vermont Office of Professional Regulation. Psychotherapy means the provision of treatment, diagnosis, evaluation, or counseling services to individuals or groups for a consideration for the purpose of alleviating mental disorders. So therapists can only work with you as long as you meet criteria, which is literally a checklist of you have to have a certain number of symptoms for a certain amount of time for each diagnosis in order to be diagnosed with a quote unquote mental disorder. So that means that once you get better and you don't meet criteria anymore, or you have some of the things on the list, some of the symptoms, but you don't have enough of them to meet criteria for a diagnosis, they can't work with you anymore. Or they can work with you for relapse prevention for a little bit, but then they have to stop working with you because then it's not therapy anymore. So for therapy, the goal is treating a quote unquote mental disorder. And I put it in quotes because I think mental disorders are just things that we made up. And it doesn't mean that they don't exist, but I think that it's subjective. So can a therapist help you become more self-centered? For sure. For sure. But you need to meet criteria. So you need to have the quote unquote right symptoms for the right amount of time, the right amount of them in order to work with them. You can do consultations with therapists and see if you meet criteria, and then you can work together. If you meet criteria for therapy and you can find a good therapist who does think about the concept of being centered in yourself, then great, go with them, because either you can use your insurance to work with them, or if they don't take insurance, you can pay out of pocket, but then I'm pretty sure, yeah, paying out of pocket, it goes toward an out of network deductible. So it can still benefit you with your healthcare plan. So that's therapy. And then with coaching, the goal can really be anything other than that, right? So coaching is really about, and I mean, you can speak to this too, Katie, because you're a fitness coach. It's a different type of coach, but it's a coach. It's like, I have this goal of I want to get better at this thing. And I have a greater goal of, for life coaching, it's I want to enjoy my life more, or I want to have certain types of relationships. You know, it could be very niche for you. It's like, I want to get healthier. I want to get fitter. I want to get stronger. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're spot on.
Cool. So it's very much a positive goal where I think of therapy as, according to the field, right? So according to these definitions that therapists have to follow, I think of therapy as I'm trying to function. I'm trying to get to this like baseline functioning of being okay enough. It's almost like for therapy, I'm like something that person's struggling in some way, right? A therapy client is struggling in some way, and the therapist is going to help them not struggle anymore. And then once you're not struggling anymore, then I think of, okay, well, coaching is like, okay, I'm good. I can function. And I have these positive goals I want to work toward. Do I need it? No, but I want it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think of it. And I know, Katie, you've talked in the past about fitness training versus like physical therapy. And I think that's kind of similar. You know, with physical therapy, it's like, okay, there's some impairment in functioning that the physical therapist is helping them get to. And then they quote unquote graduate physical therapy. But then they're like, okay, well, that's good that I don't have I don't even know what physical therapy stuff is. You would know, but like, I don't know what an example would be. I don't have a weak this or something.
Yeah, weak glutes or herniated disc or shoulder impingement or something like that.
So now I'm like baseline level of functioning, and now I want to get stronger. Now I want to increase and improve my metabolic health and just feel amazing every day. You know, that's kind of how I think about therapy versus coaching. The coaching industry, a lot of what I've seen when they try to differentiate between life coaches and therapists is they'll say, well, life coaches focuses on the present moment and the future. They don't go into the past. Like they don't talk about your past. Whereas in therapy, we are talking about your past. And it's really interesting to me because therapy can talk about your present and your future, and like the goals are in the future, you know? And also as a life coach, I can't imagine not connecting what someone is going through or like being triggered around or a block that they have, not connecting that to something in the past. If there's something in the past.
I was literally going to ask that.
Yeah. So I think it's weird. And I think it's just this attempt at distinguishing between the two. You know, there are specific therapies that have been researched, and you have to be trained. You have to have a clinical license to practice therapy in order to get trained in that. And then in order to practice that therapy, you know, life coaches can't do those things. However, there are coaching programs and trainings that's acceptance and commitment therapy for coaches, cognitive behavioral therapy coach practitioner accreditation. And then for therapists in DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which you know I have taught a lot of inspired skills from that modality, they have coaching calls. So coaching is part of DBT. And so it's like, okay, the line here is very blurry. So to me, truly the only difference is you have a diagnosis or you don't. And that whatever's going on for you, you're either struggling and you're trying to get to this baseline level of functioning, or you have that and you're trying to reach a positive goal. So that's my perspective. From the vantage point or the frame of the journey of becoming self-centered, in my opinion, you can graduate therapy, you can be discharged from therapy because you no longer have a diagnosis and you're still not self-centered. So I think that the goal of being self-centered is a higher standard than what therapy has for us, for sure. And I think a lot about the absence of illness is not wellness. That's kind of how I think about being self-centered, right? Like the absence of struggling with anxiety or depression doesn't mean that you're centered, because you could be functioning well enough, you can feel good enough, but your life is still not yours.
Mhm.
And so I think it's really important, selfies, identify where you think you might be. If you feel like you're fine and you just have these positive goals, look for a coach, but you definitely want to interview them. You definitely want to have a consultation call at least. Tell them, this is what I'm looking for. I am wanting to center myself because I have been focused so much on taking care of other people. I tend to doubt myself. Maybe I tend to be a perfectionist. I lose myself. I'm far from myself and I want to come back to me. How do you think you could help me do that? And a therapist could give you a great answer to that. A life coach could give you a great answer to that. But you just need to make sure it resonates with you. And again, use that internal guidance system of the red light, green light. How does it feel in my body when I hear their response to that?
How do you normally go about that? Like if you have a client, I mean, that you don't know, it's someone that you've met for the first time, like how do you get to the bottom of that and figure out if someone comes to you and is, I want to level up my business and I'm struggling with creativity. I feel like I used to be so creative and I've lost those things. How do I tap into that part of myself again?
Yeah. So my consultation calls are free and they're 30 minutes. So I do it within 30 minutes, which is pretty cool. I've like dialed it in, but I just ask a billion questions to really get to the root of what's going on for them. So your example was someone who feels like they've lost their creativity. I mean, when did that happen? What was happening around that time? Why is it an issue that you've lost your creativity? What does it mean to you to be a creative person? Do you have value outside of being a creative person? So it's just like asking a ton of questions to figure out, what is this really about?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The majority of my clients are therapy clients. I was actually thinking about that before this call. And I think it's because I haven't yet met a life coach who can understand the root of what's going on really for someone. Not in a rude way. I mean, I don't think they're trained that way. But I think a lot of the times if you work with a life coach, I don't know, it doesn't feel comprehensive or holistic to me. I don't know. It just seems like there are things that are missing. I guess here's what I have seen. It seems to me, and I could be wrong, if you are a life coach and you're like, I have a different perspective on this, please reach out to us because we would love to talk to you and to add this, From what I've seen, it's really like, okay, here's this tool, here's this tool, here's this tool. And so they're not really trained to understand a person.
Mm-hmm.
And how is that person functioning? And how did they lose themselves? So it's more like I have all these tools and I can offer these tools. But if you don't understand what's going on for a person, you might not realize, oh, wait, this tool doesn't fit for that. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminded me of another question that I had because the self-help industry is massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many personal development books and podcasts like our own and resources that people have. And so, my thought is, well, how is a life coach any different than reading a self-help book? I know how you were different because you were able to see that from a therapy perspective as well of like, okay, what brought this person there? But what would that be like for a life coach? Like, how is it different than just reading a book and getting oh, hey, here are the 10 steps to, becoming more XYZ.
I think that for both therapy and life coaching versus books, I think a person and the relationship matters so much. And for therapy, just because I don't think they've done this research on coaching, but there's been research in therapy, and I think I've mentioned this before on the pod, that it's the relationship between the therapist and the client that is the biggest ingredient in a successful outcome for the client. And the relationship matters so much. When you think also about being self-centered, even though we're talking about being centered in yourself, the reason that we're even talking about being self-centered is because it's in the context of other people. right? Like we wouldn't need to teach people how to become self-centered if you were the only one that you interacted with forever.
Yeah.
Like you just naturally would be. And so relationship, there's so much that can be implicitly learned and subconsciously experienced just through a relationship with someone who is centering you.
Yeah.
And so many people are external processors. There's the accountability piece, which I know as a fitness coach, you understand for your clients. And also, the therapist or the coach can individualize it. They have all this knowledge about you. And the more that they meet with you, the more that they work with you, the more knowledge that they gain about you. And so they can really pinpoint the intervention to you. Whereas a self-help book is so general. Our podcast is also general. I mean, we try really hard to come up with what do the selfies need. And that's why we ask you all to give us your questions and pod topics and all of that. But it's so different from meeting with someone and really getting to know them and understanding them. I also think that at the end of the day, it's about the person. Because I'm sure that there are a ton of incredible life coaches who are just intuitive and they have their own magic and their way of doing things that is incredible. And they're on this earth to do this work and to do it in the way that they do it. And they don't need some research or some governing body to tell them how to use their magic. You know, they're here for that reason. Like that's why they exist. This is their purpose in life. So I think that each individual person, whether it's a therapist or whether it's a coach, their unique perspective and their way of doing things is something that can only be felt in a relationship working with someone, right? I mean, obviously, hopefully y'all can feel my vibes, Katie's vibes. You know, if I wrote a book, hopefully you could feel it, but it's so different than actually being with someone.
Yeah.
Talking to them and getting to know them. And I know that when I meet with clients, sometimes I just download information. It's almost like a spiritual thing, or I'll vicariously experience what's going on in their psyche. It's nuts. And that wouldn't happen unless I was with them. So
Yeah.
that's what I think the difference is. Yeah. Oh, here's what I'll say though. The biggest complaint that I've heard from clients and from friends, so clients who've had therapists in the past and from my friends, the biggest complaint I've heard about therapy is that they don't get results, that they feel like they just go in there. It's like, oh, here's how I'm feeling. Here's what happened in the last week, you know, but it feels aimless. And there's a sense of, what's the strategy here? What are we doing in order to meet this goal? And my personality is very much, I have to be very intentional. I need to know this is what the goal is. And this is my understanding of what's getting in the way of reaching that goal. And here is specifically what I'm doing to help you reach that goal. And so I'll say that my guess would be that most life coaches are going to be more results oriented. Whereas I think a lot of the times, I love you therapists, and there's so many good therapists, and there are some therapists who aren't good at their jobs. And I almost think that there are therapists that they're lazy. I don't like saying that, but
There's everyone in every field is like that too, though. So don't beat yourself up over it. There's
yeah,
somewhere.
because I'm not saying this about therapists in general, and I'm sure that this exists for life coaches too, right? But I think therapists who aren't really motivated or care much about the outcome for their clients can be lazy. I think because therapy is kind of like, yeah, you come in and we talk and yep, it takes a long time to get better, you know? Whereas I think with a coach, I think there's more expectation that, well, we're supposed to reach a goal. You're supposed to coach me. Like coaching feels more active to me. You're just supposed to coach me and have some kind of plan to get me there. And here's the thing with therapy, we have treatment plans. That's true. So there is technically a plan, but literally, let me tell you about treatment plans. It's like, okay, what is the goal? The goal is to manage and reduce symptoms of blank diagnosis. Okay, what are your objectives to meet that goal? Okay, well, we are going to change their thoughts and beliefs about themselves so that they feel better. We are going to teach them skills for managing their emotions. We are going to teach them how to set boundaries and how to have assertive conversations. We are going to do somatic work. And that's all true, but you can literally copy and paste that if you wanted to for like pretty much every client, every diagnosis, just tweak the symptoms. And so it's kind of like a fake plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cookie cutter. And maybe coaches have the cookie cutter. Who knows? But I do think that there's going to be a lot more pressure on a coach, in my opinion. But with that said, I've had a lot of clients who have said to me, and this was even before I was life coaching, I really like how you incorporate coaching into your therapy. And I was like, oh, I didn't know I did that. It's just that I'm really deliberate about making sure that you're getting better, you know? And if you're
Yeah.
not getting better, I don't know. I don't personally feel good about sitting with someone and being like, yeah, let's keep doing this thing. I don't know. It's like, if it's not working, let's figure something out.
Yeah. Well, you're such a visual person too. I really like everything that I see from you and even how you explain this stuff. You visualize the path
I
and you
do.
visualize what
I do.
someone's best self is going to look like. And you
Yeah.
can see that so fast and you're like,
Yep.
oh, these are the strings that are missing. And if we
It's
could
true.
just bring those strings down to them and just hook them up, they'll get up into that.
That's so true. Aw, Katie, I don't think anyone else has ever seen that about me.
Oh,
Thanks.
that one was the easy one.
You're very
Come on, people, see Allie.
welcome. Yeah, no. I asked ChatGPT what questions y'all might have. ChatGPT knows all about you and about the podcast, so it's just reading your mind right now. What kind of support can I expect from a therapist versus a coach? So I think it could look very much the same, honestly, because think about this. Are you going to use a hammer and nails to build a gorgeous home on the beach that's $3 million? Yeah, you're going to use a hammer and nails and all these other tools. Are you also going to use a hammer and nails and screwdrivers, whatever, if you are doing disaster recovery and rebuilding a building that was taken down by a storm? Yeah. So it can look the same. And a lot of the approaches, honestly, can be really similar. It's just how are you using that tool, right? So the disaster recovery is like, okay, well, we need to make sure that this foundation is solid. We need to make sure that this house does not blow over in the wind, right? So it needs to be good enough, kind of similar to therapy, where, okay, we just need this baseline level of functioning. So, okay, we got you to good enough. Whereas with coaching, it's very much, again, we're trying to achieve this positive goal, just like we're trying to create the dream home. And so you're using that hammer and nails or those tools in a more specific way that's really individualized to you. Not that therapy isn't, but it's just, I think you can create a lot more. You're really creating, in the case of being self centered, you're creating a life that reflects you and who you really are. You are developing relationships with yourself and with other people, and you want those relationships to be fun and fulfilling and joyful. And in romantic relationships, you want it to be like hot and sexy and passionate, no matter how old you are. And you want to feel like you're always growing, you know, or maybe you don't. Maybe for you, it's like, actually, I have done a lot of work in my life and I really want to learn how to relax and just enjoy. And I don't know how to do that because I'm so stuck in over functioning. You know, the approach for that could look very similar to therapy because we're looking at, well, what is getting in the way? What are your mindset blocks? What is somatically wired into your nervous system around this? So we're going to help you shift that, but not because we need to in order for you to function, more because you're going to feel amazing after, and it's going to be another level up. So I've heard a lot of coaches say, new level, new devil. As you level up, there is a new thing in your life for you to work through. And yeah, you know, Totally. I mean, like we could work through things forever if we want to, right?
Mhm.
I think of it as new level, same devil. So the issues that you were working on in therapy to get to a better level of functioning or a baseline functioning are usually going to show up just in a different way. It's going to be the same blocks. It's just going to show up in a different way when you're trying to achieve this life that you want or creating the business that you want. So if when you were feeling anxious and depressed, you were doubting yourself and feeling imposter syndrome, and maybe you couldn't show up to work or you hid from what was really bothering you and didn't have conversations with your coworkers. But now in therapy, you have figured that out. And so, okay, I'm, good enough. I feel good enough about myself that I can do this job with this employer. I can show up. I can have conversations with my coworkers and everything's fine. It's good. But with coaching, same devil, but it's showing up now because, oh, I actually have a vision and a purpose that I realized when I was in therapy. And I need to not do this job anymore. I need to actually create my own thing. I actually need to create a business. Well, guess what's going to come up? Imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
going to be self doubt. What else might come up? Feeling scared to be assertive when people are doubting you that you can do this business. And maybe it's even coming from a positive place. Maybe the people who care about you are like, business is so hard. You are so stressed out right now. And you need a coach who's like, yeah, you're stressed out and let me help you with that stress. Right. Which
Mhm.
a therapist is going to help you with your stress, but it's going to look different or be for a different reason. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about now that I said that new level, same devil. I'm like, how does that show up for me? Do you know how it shows up for you?
Okay. The overfunctioning and the imposter syndrome has been always,
Yeah.
always. Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you were bringing up the imposter syndrome example, I was immediately thinking of my own career because I started in corporate America and I
Hmm.
worked in corporate America for a long time. And in terms of education as well, in
Hmm.
business and finance, that's my background is business and finance. When I started with that, it was like, oh, okay, I have to have this perfect GPA. I have to, be top of all of my classes, which I was and I did. And then when
Yeah.
I went into working for someone else, it's like, okay, well, I have to have top remarks on all of my performance reviews and I have to be the best in my department or the best in my company and these sorts of things. And then you get out on your own and it's like, well, I have to be the very best independent trainer. But the imposter syndrome piece of it was, okay, well, now I don't have a checklist anymore
Yeah.
of what the boss says. And I don't have someone
Yeah.
else giving me the feedback of, oh, yeah, you are performing to the level that we say you're supposed to perform to. And then it's like, oh, shit. Well,
Hmm.
there's
Totally.
nothing to validate me anymore.
Yeah. There's no performance reviews. It's like in school, we had grades.
Yeah.
And then working for someone else, you have performance reviews and feedback. And
Hmm.
then you're in your own business. You're like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's even like the assertive piece that you mentioned, like there's the assertiveness when you're working for someone else. It's like, okay, I'm learning how to stand up for myself to my boss or, to be able to have difficult conversations with my coworkers or that sort of thing. And then now owning my own business, I'm like, oh shit, well, I have to learn how to be assertive with my customers,
Yeah.
with people that are testing my boundaries and testing my
And
time
directly
and my
paying you.
yeah. And if someone's not paying me on time, am I able to come to that person and be like, oh, hey, this isn't acceptable? If someone's constantly showing up late, am I able to have a difficult, like, that's an assertiveness piece that I have to keep and keep and keep learning.
Yeah, for sure. I think I might be a little too early in business with myself to know. I mean, there's definitely been things that I've been working on business wise, but I don't think I've done it long enough to be able to zoom out and see it.
Yeah, that's fair. It,
See
it
the change.
certainly took me until I felt like I was full time and
Yeah.
have been full time for a while
Yeah.
and seen a bunch of different types of people, types of scenarios and situations. And I mean, that's the thing, you never really arrive.
Yeah,
Like
for
there's
sure.
always some new thing that you're like, oh shit, I haven't dealt with this before. But that's the same thing is new level, same devil is it's like I haven't
Exactly.
dealt with this new situation yet. but the tools that I need are probably going to be the same. It's just
Right.
now I have to say, oh, I have to apply this to the new thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can be really helpful to work with someone. In that case, it would be working with a life coach. The reason that it's helpful to work with a life coach instead of just remembering the tools that you learned from the past is that sometimes you don't even see that it is the same devil.
Mm-hmm.
And you need that because we all have blind spots. Yeah, it's like this thing is bigger than me. That's kind of how I think about both therapy and coaching. That thing is bigger than them. They're enveloped by it, so they can't really see it. I think of it as when things are so big that we don't have the ability to zoom out and get perspective, to
Yeah.
put it in perspective. And it's so big that it's filling us up. Like we can't do anything with it because we can't hold it and really respond to it. So yeah, so that's actually another good answer for the
Why a life coach is helpful.
well, why therapy or life coaching is often more helpful than just a book.
Yeah.
Okay. What credentials should I look for in a therapist versus a life coach? So this is also subjective. So, what credentials should I look for in a therapist versus a life coach? So, for a therapist, in terms of credentials, and we talked about this last time, there's lots of different degrees and licenses and things that therapists can have. So, it could be a master's in counseling or social work or a doctorate level psychologist or a psychiatrist. To me, the credentials don't really matter. A lot of people will think people with doctorates are better. Clients will. They'll just be like, doctors are better than nurses, and a doctorate is better than a master's. And I get that line of thinking. I don't agree with it, because you can get a master's degree and then keep learning and just specialize because you decided to go get training specifically in certain things versus staying in a doctorate program where you had to do their curriculum. I think what really matters is your connection with the person. And when you meet with them, does it sound like they actually know how to help you and that they understand you? Make sure that they're a clear mirror so they can understand you. So in my consults, this is how it goes. I say, so what I like to do is I will have you tell me what you're looking for, like what brings you here, what are you hoping to get out of it, whether it's therapy or life coaching, and what are you hoping to get out of it, and what do you think is getting in the way of you achieving this goal or this thing that you want. And then they'll tell me. And usually it's a combination of here are the things that have been going on in my life. Here's how I've been feeling, how I've been thinking. Here's how I've been like acting, behaving, and I would rather it be this. And I think this is what might be going on. And so usually, so then I ask a whole bunch of questions to get clarification. And as they're talking, I'm connecting all these patterns and themes and I'm seeing kind of how everything functions. And then I say, okay, based on what you've told me so far and my understanding so far after 10, 15 minutes, it seems like, and then I tell them, this is what I'm seeing. And I'm guessing my impression is that this might be impacting this, and this is getting in the way of this, and you need support with this skill or this thing, this trauma that happened, you haven't recovered from, integrated. A lot of the times people are homesick is kind of how I call it. You're sick for yourself, right? You're homesick for yourself. You're not self-centered and we need to reconnect you to you. So basically I'll be like, this is what I'm seeing. So I'm their clear mirror. And does that resonate or not? Usually it does resonate. And if it doesn't, then they just keep clarifying until I figure it out. So then, okay, cool. That resonates. So I got it. And here's what we would do together. This is what we would do to work on this. This is what we would do. And so I already, even if they don't work with me, I know for sure, at least in the beginning, this is what we would start doing. And so is that because I'm a therapist? Is that because I'm a life coach? No, that's because it's the way I think. No one taught me how to do that. So I don't think the credentials matter. And then for a life coach, so there are coaching programs for life coaches, but it's just someone who like got an LLC and was like, okay, I'm a life coaching program now. And now we have certificates that I made up. you know? So it's like, if you want, you can look into programs and if you like the way that coaches are trained, you can reach out to them. And I'm sure they have a bunch of people who have graduated from their programs. So you could try to find people that way. But there aren't any like official credentials for life coaches.
And by official, you mean like
Legal.
federally regulated or like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. What I'm not saying is that these programs are BS. That's not what I'm saying. I'm sure that there are programs that are great. It's just when I think of the word credentials, I think about academic degrees and I think about regulated licenses that are legal practices. But just because someone isn't credentialed doesn't mean that they can't help you and that they're not legitimate. So like I said, if you wanted to, you could totally just Google like life coaching program for, and then maybe put in the things that you want help with. And then if you like, look at different programs and if you like the way that they teach their students, then yeah, reach out to them. I'm sure they can connect you and they probably know who was top of the class, So okay. How do I know if a life coach is qualified and ethical? So unfortunately, you don't. That's part of the issue with not being legally regulated. I don't know. What's the definition of qualified and ethical?
I think, at least from an ethical standpoint, because it doesn't seem like there's any specific qualifications unless you personally have a belief that says, I can't be helped in XYZ thing except by someone who has done the thing I want to do. Like, let's say you're someone who needs coaching on, I don't know, life coaching into entering the entertainment industry or something.
Yeah.
And you won't feel like you're getting good advice or guidance unless you are getting help from someone who also had to enter the entertainment industry. Like, I know that's a weird example,
but wouldn't that be like a niche career coach?
It would be a niche career coach. But you could also say like, I don't feel like I could get help with.
I have to work with someone who's been divorced to work through my divorce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Something relatable. But I think, and this is a really important part that I'm hearing as like a consistent trend, and I think is the ethical piece of it. You do need to have someone who can communicate them being a clear mirror. Because one of my fears from a life coaching perspective, if I was to start with a life coaching environment, you have coaches who have like the big name mastermind groups and that sort of thing. And they're there to sell their program. But again, I could get that program in a book and I could do that on my own. But the benefit here is the life coach can hear and see you and can reflect back to your experiences. So, and I think this is also similar to your business coaching experience.
You know what? Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yep. Okay. But yes, Allie's going to talk about the business coaching thing in like a hot second, but being able to see see the person in front of you and speak to that.
Yes.
As opposed to just rattle off like, oh, this is the 10-step program.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So, okay. Because whether someone is qualified or not, I'm looking up the definition of qualified. Officially recognized as being trained to perform a particular job. Okay. So how do I know if a life coach is qualified and ethical? So they might be qualified in a certain way, right? So they might be trained to do a certain thing according to a certain program that they went through or life experience that they've had. But you have to figure that out. And to Katie's point, you really need to talk to them and make sure that they do understand you and get you. And I will talk about my experience in a second with coaches. And then the ethical piece. So there is nothing is going to happen to a life. There's no license for a life coach to lose if they aren't ethical. And I think that the programs that some life coaches choose to go through probably have ethical standards that they're supposed to follow. But if they don't follow them, what do they have to lose? Like there's no accountability there. If a therapist is unethical, and there are ethical practices, there are things that we can and can't do, and we could lose our license if we're reported and then there's an investigation and then we literally can't practice therapy anymore because it's important to make sure that therapists are ethical. So let's talk about my experiences with coaches. So I have worked with 3 business coaches and 1 life coach, and I regret all of it.
Damn. Okay.
Let me think about how much I spent on those things. So almost $15,000 on those 3 different people. It was not worth it. And I mean, I did learn from it, because I choose to learn from mistakes, but they were mistakes. I think what I learned is how good marketing can really, I don't know, when I went into it, meeting with them, doing the quote unquote consult, they probably wouldn't call it that. They'd call it like a clarity call or like a, something. And you probably can relate to this, Selfie, thinking about being a potential client of therapy or being a potential client of life coaching. It's like, you're not an expert in that. So you're showing up and you're like, here's what's going on for me. And then the person on the other side, for me, these coaches were like, oh yeah, so I'm hearing that you blah, 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 repeating what I said in their own words. So what we need to do is blah, 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 blah. And I don't really know what they're talking about because I'm not an expert in it, but it sounds good. Here's what it was. This is actually really ironic because, coaching is seen as, and I was even saying before, it's kind of the how, like the strategy for reaching your goals. But that's what was missing for me with all these coaches, is that it would be like, okay, here's my 3-step plan, or here are the things that you have to do in order to reach this goal. And it just didn't align for me. And then when it didn't align for me, they didn't flex. They didn't make it align for me. They didn't individualize it or try to understand me. And that's why I was saying it seems like coaches are just taught tools. And they're like, here's this tool. And I'm like, okay, for me, this tool's a little too big. Like I need it to be a little smaller for me to be able to use it. And they're like, a lot of them just use the mindset thing of like, oh, well, just believe that you can use it. Just believe that it can fit for you. You're getting in your own way. And I'm like, no, you're literally making shit up. Like you can't just make everything about mindset and lack of motivation and lack of consistency, And so I just felt like they didn't get me, but they were really good on the initial call with making me feel like they got me. And with coaching, I don't do this, but with coaching, well, I actually do this, but my clients don't use it, which is fine. They have packages. They didn't have, well, I guess they did. They had, you can meet with them individually, but it's like an astronomical price versus the package is not affordable, but more affordable. I paid into this package of like $3,000 or $6,000. And then I realized, oh, this isn't working for me, but I'm trying to be open-minded to it. And then okay, crap, like all that money is just down the drain. So I did have one of the business coaches, the marketing strategy that she taught was really, really good. And I took notes on absolutely everything. And I'm so glad because I will go back and I do take things from that. But it was like drinking from a fire hose. It was like, okay, you need to watch all these modules and then you need to do this number of reels a week. You need to do this number of posts a week. And if you don't have time for it, then you just need to wake up earlier in the morning. Like, how bad do you want it? And it didn't naturally evolve with me. Like I was thinking about this today that you need time to integrate stuff, which I mean, I know that as a provider and I work with my clients in that way, but that's what was happening for me was I need time with this. Like I can't, but then there's all this pressure because it's like, well, this is a package and it ends at this time because you paid for 3 months. And so if you want to get all this information, then you have to be doing all these things to keep moving forward and get more information. it was so stressful. It impacted my mental health. It was awful. And I just think it really needs to be tailored to you. But again, that comes back to the person. That's not an issue necessarily with life coaching. I think it's more about the person. And like you said, Katie, are they a clear mirror? Do they understand you? Are they willing to shift and make it work for you? You just paid so much money for this supposedly individualized one-on-one support, but my one-on-one support is telling you that you're wrong when you come to me with why you keep.
Yeah, it screams. So this would be a yellow to orange flag that I would encourage the selfies to keep an eye out for. If you are looking for a life coach that will individualize a program to you, they won't say buy my 10-step program with my life coaching sessions.
Yes.
Because that 10-step program, that's the only framework they're going to work within.
Yeah.
It's not buy 10 sessions of us working wherever you're at.
Right. Right.
For whatever your goals are.
Exactly.
Like there is I think for a successful life coach, and I think that for any coach, for a successful business coach, for a successful personal training coach, for a successful life coach, like you have to have an open mind and say, I actually don't have the goal. Mm-hmm. The client has the goal. Yeah. I don't have the end result. The client has the end result. Mm-hmm. I have vision. Mm-hmm. I have a plethora of resources that I can tap into. And I have the ability to communicate and see the person in front of me. Yeah. And I think so question for you, in all of those consultations for business coaches and for the life coach that you worked with, how much time was actually spent asking you about you?
There were so many assumptions that were made. So many assumptions that were made. And the only example that I can think of for when one of them asked about me, what they asked about me was, what would you tell one of your clients as a therapist?
Oh my God. Sorry, I wanted to immediately vomit.
Which is not what I'm paying you for.
No.
And I could ask myself that.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I also do consultations for people with personal training. And I mean, you know this, my personal training approach it's not just fitness. It's very holistic. I spend an hour asking clients everything about their life. And I tell them up front, I'm like, hey, this might sound a little invasive. If there are questions that are too invasive, I'm happy to skip over them. But I do want to know everything because I can't figure out why you can't commit to exercise if I don't know what else is happening behind the scenes. And I don't mean that in an invasive way. I do just mean like, what's your support system? Yeah. What are your roadblocks? What are the previous things you've tried? What's worked for you? What has there's so many different lists. And I would imagine, and I have a feeling this is exactly the types of questions that you ask someone is, okay, what have you tried before? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? What have you experienced previously? What's your vision of yourself, 6 months to a year from now if it's successful? What can you do with this new lifestyle? There's so many questions that should happen along the way. And those, I think, are the green flags. If you're not talking to someone who is saying, how can I see you? Mm-hmm. What can I, if you're the expert never demands to you. They don't spend the entire time talking your ear off, trying to validate to you why they're the expert.
Yeah, or telling you that you're wrong and the reason that you're not achieving your goals is your fault. Is there accountability that needs to happen? Yes. But in my opinion, if a client is not achieving their goals or doing things that we planned for them to do between meetings, sessions, whatever, calls, then I'm not immediately saying, well, you just need to be more motivated or you just need to have a better mindset and making assumptions. I'm saying, what got in the way? Yeah, let's talk about that. Okay, something got in the way. We can make a plan together. I can figure out. And if you don't know, we can figure out together what is getting in the way and how do I help you move around that barrier or around that block so that you can still achieve it. That did not happen for me. And I think you're right. People, it's very ego-based and an expert stance to say, well, I have all the answers And if you're not improving, then it's your fault because I know everything and you should be getting better. I have so many gaps in my knowledge. I'm going to be learning forever because sometimes what comes out of these conversations with clients is, oh, I still don't really get it. And neither do they. And so I go do my own research. Sometimes I get more training. So I think a true expert knows so much that they're humble. A true
Yes.
expert knows so much that they know how much they don't know.
Yes. Yes. That is one of the, so I've worked with a number of clients, and one of the comments that I get consistently from my clients, they will say like, yeah, I know you know a lot about a lot of things, and you were willing to tell me you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't know, I know that you'll follow up in 2 to 3 sessions and have found the answer. Like, you know that there are things that you don't know, and you're willing to go learn about them, and you're not going to make up some BS cookie cutter answer in the moment to try to cover your ass and still seem like the expert, because that happens a lot. That happens in fitness.
Yeah, don't benefit from that.
No one benefits from
Yes,
that.
answer.
But that's the ego, right? And so that's what you want, is you want a trainer or a coach that isn't living out their life from ego.
Yeah, exactly. So a coach that's self-centered, honestly, because if you're centered in yourself, if you're centered in your soul is really what that is. I mean, but if you're not spiritual, then it's just self-centered, right? But if you're centered in who you really are, your core authentic self, then you know that you have unconditional worth and unconditional value. So it's not a threat for you to not know, right? Whereas the ego is fundamentally insecure and needs to achieve or meet these conditions in order to feel secure, although it never does feel secure because they reach that thing and new level, same devil. So we got to actually help them get out of ego, right? Because the ego you can definitely still be ego-centered and not need therapy. Let me tell you, you can be high functioning and very successful and have a big ass ego. Yeah. So, I don't know. That was good. That was valuable.
Just looking at the big picture of everything that we've talked about, therapy versus life coaching. I'd say therapy gets someone out of pain and distress and harm, and there's something broken or wrong that I'm dealing with in my life. Life coaching says, I'm here. I want to be shooting for the stars. I want to be getting to the next level. I can function. I can continue to survive like this. However, I want more.
Yes. Yes.
The therapy versus life coaching. That's what we got from that. I think I got my arm floating around. I think probably the biggest takeaway from this truly is you need to find a coach. If you're looking for a life coach, you need to find a coach who will listen and who will ask questions and who can be a clear mirror for you. And I think that's true for therapy too. But if they are here to sell their program and not to see you as a person, as an individual, they might not be the right fit, and they might not help you get where you need to get going. Are there certifications and qualifications? Therapy is much more strict on that and much more explicit on what those qualifications looked like. And you have the accountability of licensing boards that say, hey, this has to happen and this can't happen and this can happen, to provide that accountability for you. With life coaching, you kind of have to do your own vetting. And I think that's really where meeting with the coach and seeing if you two vibe and if, that relationship can be developed. And if, again, they can see and hear and understand you as a person and tailor their approaches to you, I think that's where you get your vetting and your qualification. Both can help. Like, let's say you reach out to someone that's, oh yeah, this is my 10-step program. If you say, well, what if your 10-step program doesn't work for me?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a great interview question, honestly.
That's a really good question because that is not an offensive question. And if someone takes offense to it, it's ego-based. Or if their answer to that is, well, it will.
Or mindset.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very telling question. Well, what if your program doesn't work for me? Because the person should say something to the effect of, then I need to learn more about you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll adapt my program to fit you.
Yeah.
If it's not that answer or something to that effect, or I need to, help you reach that next level. So then we add some new steps to the program.
Right. Yeah. I think a good answer to that also is like, and if it's not right, it's not right.
Yeah. And that's okay.
It's possible that I can't help you or that I'm not the right fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we just got to end it.
We got to get the fuck off this call.
All right. Bye, guys. We love you.
Peace.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.